Kia ora, Tefano Markie here, seizing the moment to shoot a video. Not the most salubrious location, but kind of the quality of light's quite nice, isn't it? I'm bathed in the light of the dying sun. There's been a fantastic sunset today, so I'm parked in the car. Had a few moments and I thought I would do a quick vlog. So welcome to the channel if you're new to it. So those of you familiar with the channel will know that we're a bit raw, we're a bit rough, we're a bit ready, because I have ADHD and I do things very spontaneously. So you know, we don't have slick videos with studio lighting, and so we have shaky camera and we're kind of in the moment, you know, live and raw and edgy, so all those kinds of things. So what I wanted to talk about is something that I often bemoan. I'm not sure quite what angle to take it. This is a serious point, really. I could put this in my kind of 101 Room 101 ranty series, or I could put it in something a bit more serious. That's fireworks, by the way. Not I'm not under fire. So it's coming up to bonfire night. I'm going to do a video on bonfire night as well, by the way. Yeah, let's see if I can show you the fireworks. Any more? Or is that it? So it's not a proper display, it's, you know, somebody doing it in their garden, kids doing it on the street or something like that. So yeah, this is kind of about maybe about separatism or parochialism or tribalism, nationalism, lack of empathy, exclusivity. I like to think that, you know, as human beings we're all one, you know, and a human life is of the same value regardless of whether it's somebody with the same characteristics or race or nationality or inclination as me. I think I would be prone to maybe be more upset by things that are closer to home. But what I want to talk about is how I've got many complaints about the media. I think there are some real, in society, there's some real bastions of evil, really. And I think the fashion industry is one of them, the pharmaceutical industry is another, the arms trade is one. But certainly the media, you know, they do a lot of good, but they do a lot of bad, and the bad that they do is often quite subtle, it's quite insidious. So, for example, one of the things, I've got more fireworks, just when I turned away from them, they started up again. So one of the things that really bugs me is the way sometimes things are reported and the way that they're put across. So if you think about when there's a big disaster in the world, so you know, it might be a bombing, you know, in some capital city, or it might be a big plane crash. The way it's written, and I suppose I'm talking from my experience of kind of like the British media. So what will happen is if a plane goes down in Tanzania, you know, whether it's a terrorist act or a crash or an accident, the way the news would be reported is that there were, you know, and there were 5 Britons on board the airliner that died, you know, and it's like, you know, should that be our first thought? You know, a plane's died and all of the passengers and crew have been killed. Should we be thinking, oh, are there any British people on board? Are there any people like me that are on board? But you know, and I think that just kind of creates this kind of very selfish way of looking at things. The other kind of thing is when the budget, and again I'm kind of talking kind of British media again. So for those of you who aren't from Britain, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, which is a title that you know is and a job that's given to a politician, and a very senior role. They set the budget, the government budget, and there's a lot of pomp and ceremony around this, and a lot of tradition and stuff, and it's always reported in the news, and people kind of talk about, I wonder what's going to be in the budget, and it's basically, you know, so it's about kind of fiscal policy, really. It's about, you know, what government is going to spend on, what areas they're going to make cuts on, and taxes, so taxes can go up, taxes can, different types of taxes, some go up, some go down, so it's, it's quite a complicated thing. Being kind of somebody that failed their economics A level, I do have a little bit of I tend to see the bigger picture. I tend to think of the budget not as about, by making these changes, this is how it will affect the economy on a broader level. So this will reduce inflation, this will reduce unemployment, this would, so it's macro effects of these things. And the way the press report it is always like, well, the average family will be 50 pence a week better off under this budget, or 50 pence, or the working class family will be 50 pence a week worse off. A middle class family with 4 children and a parakeet will be 50 pence better off, and that's how they present it. So what I think that encourages is a lot of very selfish people who rather than thinking about bigger issues like poverty and unemployment, healthcare, how we look after war veterans, whatever it might be. Rather than thinking about those broader issues, we're thinking about the budget in terms of, I'm going to vote for the and it translates to votes. I'm going to vote for the politician that's going to make me 50 pence a week better off. That's how we get. And how petty and fucking ridiculous is that? How self-centered and insular is that? What a way of looking at things. And that's why what happens is people vote fiscally. People vote based on whether they're going to be better off or worse off, even though it's only might be by a tiny margin that you're not going to even notice. That's how people vote, rather than voting on the ethics, voting on is this a government that's going to support our health service? Is this a government that's is going to be ethical in their foreign policy? We vote on the basis of whether we're going to be 50 pence a week better off or 50 pence a week worse off. So so I think this is kind of video is probably too serious to put under the heading of Room 101, though it is a bit of a rant on my part. But I think the other thing that now I have to be honest, okay, where I don't know about something, I don't like to kind of bullshit. So I'm not somebody that's studied Maslow a great deal, but there's a YouTube channel that I follow called actualized.org, and they have done an excellent video about Maslow and about self-actualization. So self-actualization is about achieving a very high degree of personal growth. So you become, the best person that you can be. I'll put a link to the video and it explains a lot more than that. But self-actualization, he identified a lot of kind of symptoms, if you like, or indicators of being self-actualized. And quite a few of them seem to be along the lines of not having this self-centered, insular, or even kind of anthrocentric. Is it anthrocentric or anthropocentric? Anthropocentric, I think. Which in other words is looking at everything, even from a human perspective. People get beyond that and they have a higher perception. Now I have that. I think I'm a long way from being self-actualized, but I've always kind of struggled with people that have had this very narrow perspective, even when it comes to just looking at things from a human point of view. So for example, when people say, quite often people say this, wasps, and they're talking about wasps, they say, oh, what good are wasps, what do they do? At least bees give us honey. Well, it's like, why should wasps produce something useful for human beings? And of course they do, because everything is part of an ecology. Everything kind of is part of a working system. If you look at and that channel does some really good stuff on systems theory as well, actually. So it's a very I always struggle with that word, way of looking at it, to think, well, what do wasps do for us. Wasps aren't supposed to fucking do anything for us. We are not human beings. We are not the be all and end all of the planet. In fact, I think we are actually more like a virus on the planet. You know, we're actually a negative effect on the planet. One of the things that Maslow talks about is that as you become more self-actualized, you don't even have this sort of this narrow kind of human first kind of, or seeing everything from a human perspective. You see things from a kind of a universal perspective, and I don't mean in a particularly spiritual way. You see it from the perspective of, well, we're part of a world, we're part of a universe, we're part of something much bigger, and we're a small part of it, and it doesn't revolve around us. We are just a part of nature. And we are not the most important part of nature, and nature shouldn't necessarily come second to us. Other species shouldn't necessarily come second to us. You know, this attitude that, you know, we are you know, the owners of the whole world, and all the resources in the world, you know, are there for us humans to exploit, is one that's, you know, taking us to the brink of extinction. So yeah, so I suppose this video is imploring you really to think bigger, to step away from self-centeredness, to step away from tribalism and nationalism, and from this narrow, you know, perspective, seeing things from, you know, even from the perspective of the human race, to something, you know, something much bigger. You know, the broadest, you know, I think it's always good to see things in the broadest perspective possible. And this applies to things like racism and everything. You know, all these things are, you know, people kind of taking a very tribalistic, you know, and the world is getting worse. I think we are. It's probably another video I'm going to do on polarization. People are, you know, digging themselves into sides and camps and parties. And becoming much more polarized, you know, so there's, you know, a huge gap between right and left, you know, and things like that at the moment, which I think is really unhealthy. So step out of this narrow view, you know, step out of this narrow perspective, you know, kind of ascend to a higher plane, a higher place, you know, where you can take a much broader perspective and look down, not look down in a negative way, but look down upon everything, see the breadth of the situation, not just from, you know, not just from your own narrow perspective, not just from your view from your window, you know, take the view from up there in the sky, you know, take that much broader view, and you'll be a better person for it, and the world will be a better place for it. Rangimarie.